Well, maybe they shouldn't have had a spring game.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Landon, like I teased just before the break, it was maybe they should have done the spring game. It was a rough outing for the offense. First drive looked great. I say looked great. We didn't get to watch it. Read great. Yeah, it was on radio, or you had to just follow along with updates, and that's kind of what we had to end up doing. Yeah. But Shapen led them right down the field, and then they kind of stalled, missed I believe it was a 46-yard field goal. Then he goes 3 and out, and then really the offense can't get anything going except for Kamario Taylor played really well, especially at the end. He ends up leading a field goal drive into the first half. I believe it was like a 48-yarder that they hit, but overall wasn't a great showing. And you felt, and the offense should have been farther along than the defense, and it did not show.
You would hope it would be. And, maybe the defense is great. Maybe the offense is fine, and this is a great defense.
Yeah, right.
It seems like the offensive line is kind of the problem. Like, again, we're not watching the game, so we can't see exactly what's happening.
A lot of TFLs.
A lot of TFLs and a lot of meeting the running back, the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. Which, hey, maybe the defensive line is great. We've talked about it a lot.
Maybe, but they've been saying they're going back into the spring portal for some offensive linemen, and I think that's what they need to do.
Yeah.
Hopefully they kind of figure it out, and it's just, the early season, they're still gelling. I mean, that's pretty much a whole new line. They haven't played together a ton. Hopefully it's a fixable problem and not just a complete lack of talent problem.
Yeah, and every time it seemed like they had a big play, it was coming back on a penalty, whether it's a holding, offensive pass interference. Like Kamario Taylor hits a big touchdown pass. Great catch, apparently. But it's called back for a penalty. And then, Blake Shapen takes off on a big run and, again, called back on a holding penalty. And so it just feels like anytime they started getting some momentum, it was pulled back and called back due to a penalty, which is just sloppy play. And that's not just your offensive line. Obviously, the holding penalty was, but that's you as a team just not operating well, especially because we know spring games, they don't call a lot of penalties.
No. So if you're holding and getting called for holding in a spring game, you're really holding.
Yeah, exactly.
And, I think there was a Shapen overthrew one of the receivers on like a go ball or something. So, the offense is just not clicking. Like they're just a step off. Hopefully it's just some timing stuff. Maybe the rotating of quarterback, it's early. Right. So every quarterback's getting reps. So hopefully that's some of it once they settle in and, Shapen's taking all the reps with all the ones. Maybe the timing gets better, but it's that things are a little out of sorts, and it's not good. Like spring game is glorified practice. So, you got to look good, and it is not.
Yeah, you don't want to take too much away from a spring game. It's hard to, but it is very disappointing the offense wasn't able to move the ball better. Like I said, Shapen was able to get them into position for some scores, and then the offense would just stall. It would be a sack, it'd be a TFL, it'd be a penalty, whatever it may be, would kill the drive. And you just can't do that. You're already a team that's not going to be as talented as a lot of teams that you're going to be facing. And so if you're making those little mistakes as well, it's not going to be good. A good team that kind of reminds me of a team that, was really good at this was Kansas State all those years with Bill Snyder. Yeah. They weren't as talented as people, but they did not beat themselves. And a lot of teams, and the reason why they were so good was a lot of teams beat themselves that were more talented than them. But if they played a really good team that was also smart and didn't turn it over and didn't commit penalties, then they usually got beat because they just didn't have the talent. Mississippi State, you have to kind of take that mindset where you just can't beat yourself. And throughout the spring game, they beat themselves.
Yeah, they beat themselves. And like you said, Kamario Taylor apparently looked very good from what we have heard. Try to get some positive spin coming out of this spring game.
And he was the QB too.
Yes.
It wasn't Cromenhawk. He went in second, and he played the most snaps in the first half with Shapen of the backups.
Right. And, apparently, according to people who were at the game, said that the best the offense looked was when Taylor was the quarterback.
Yep.
And I don't You hope that's an endorsement of more of Taylor than an indictment on the other quarterbacks. But yeah, apparently even though there was a turnover on downs, he still looked great. We mentioned the great throw that apparently also had a good catch on the other end. It's just maybe he's the guy. Maybe you just say this is development, put him out there. We know we're winning. We're hoping 3 wins this season. Let's start getting the young kids some reps.
It's one of those that I'm fine if Shapen's the starter, especially early in the year. But if it's starting to go downhill and it's already a lost season, you're not going to be bowl eligible, then you should just get the guy out there to get some reps. Now, the one negative to that is you don't want to ruin his confidence. You don't want him to go out there, play terrible, and just lose all confidence. But you're right. Everyone was raving about him. I believe it was Paul Jones over at On3. I could be wrong, but he posted that he looked well above his progression in terms of, we've talked about how he was probably going to be a developmental guy that was going to take a year or two to be there. But Paul Jones was saying that he's well above that and could be a guy that could step in if they need to, which, we've talked about a lot. Shapen has an injury history.
Yeah. So it might not be a start him over Shapen. It might be he ends up playing anyway. And I mean, his speed gives you another dimension. And when we talked about the other day, blanking on the receiver that we talked about, the Q&A, who said he had like the best arm talent that he'd seen in a long time.
Yeah.
Mosley, yeah. And it's like,
which he apparently had a really nice day.
Yes. Which maybe Taylor does have that level of arm talent, since everyone's raving about. I mean, obviously we knew he had a talented arm, but maybe it's at that level with the level of rave reviews he's getting from this spring game. And, you don't want to burn the red shirt either. Like, I mean, I know that's not a huge thing, but you don't want to like play him sparingly for 3 games, keep the red shirt, and then when the season's done, then you play him like the last 3 games, hurt his confidence and burn the red shirt at the same time. That's kind of worst case scenario. So I think you either have to commit to him or you just put him on the back burner for a year.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's so hard to figure out. And really, that's up to the coaches to figure out what kind of player is he. Is he one that is easily to lose his confidence? You would see that in practice already, signs of that, which, again, that's not a negative towards him. A lot of freshmen are that way.
Yeah.
They come from being stars their whole life to life comes at you fast, the college level. And a lot of them get down on themselves early on, and that's why it's usually always best to let them sit for the year, kind of learn, and then know how to handle that adversity. So you have to be able to figure that out. Is he someone that struggles with confidence already? But if he's very confident in practice and is ripping it around, I wouldn't burn the red shirt. Like you said, I would play him the 4-game max that you can play him. And then obviously the bowl game, you can play him without any issues, which I would expect even if Shapen started the whole year, Taylor probably is your bowl game starter just because that's just how college football is. If you made it that far, obviously.
Right. And if he's not the starter, Shapen's getting like a quarter to be like, thank you for your work. And then Taylor plays the rest of the game kind of. But I do think Lodeholt's got some work to do on that O-line based off of what we've heard.
Yeah.
And
that's why it sucks that he came when he came, because they had already gone through that winter portal cycle. And that's usually when you can get a lot of good guys.
Yeah. And we haven't talked about the defense much, but defense is hard to talk about when you're not watching it, because it's very challenging. You don't know what coverages are not working and things because you just can't see it.
Well, you talked about the overthrow. Was that a blown coverage and he was just wide open and missed him, or was it really good tight coverage and he just put it over the top?
Or was it a great route combination that just left him open?
Yeah.
So I think that's why we're not talking about defense too much, because we can't see what happened. Offense is easier to like project what is going on from reports.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say about the defense, TFLs is great. And again, we talked about that's probably not good offensive line play. But the one thing about it, Mississippi State last year especially, and then that they needed to correct this year, is they weren't taking advantage of bad offensive lines. They weren't getting the TFLs. They weren't getting the sacks against bad offensive lines. And so if they feasted on a bad offensive line, that's good signs heading into the year. Now, I don't think they're going to play a lot of teams as bad offensive line as Mississippi State, but you need to be able to take advantage. If you're going to be a good defensive line, you got to take advantage of the mismatches.
Oh, you have to. And if they're doing that, then great. They might not show up as much during the season, but if you have the talent to take advantage of it, you're moving in the right direction.
Right. And then like the Taylor incident, that's another one that's hard to figure out what happened because he was sacked on, I believe, a third down or a fourth down. But was it because he was trying to extend a play, get someone open and was sacked, or was it just snap, boom, sack? Like,
yeah,
without seeing it, it was hard to tell. But it seemed like the defense line played pretty well. And again, against a bad offense line, you have to.
Yeah, they did. And the fact that the halftime score was like 3-0 or whatever. Right. I mean, it's I guess all the defensive players are playing well. We'll go with that, and not that the offense is doing bad. Defense played great.
Yeah, that's the positives we're taking out of it for sure. But all right, coming up next, the basketball team landed several transfer portal additions this weekend. We have to talk about it because these are some big ones, and they could help you get back to the NCAA tournament. We'll talk about that next. We get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. You definitely don't want to use anybody else, especially if you're in the supply trade. Like I mentioned, their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon, so we got some basketball additions in the transfer portal. We've already, talked about some of the big losses, Keyshawn Murphy to Auburn, Riley Kugel to UCF. Adrian Myers is someone that hasn't committed yet, but, Nwonko went to LSU. Kanye Clary went to Oklahoma State. Mm-hmm. So there's been a lot of subtractions. Well, here's some additions. Obviously, we have Jabari McGee from UAB. We have Quincy Ballard from Wichita State. Those two were already here. But they also added Amir Ali from Arizona State, Sam Walters from Michigan, and Aker from Kansas State. And the one thing that I want to say before I send it over to you, listen to these 3-point percentages from some of these guys. So Aker has a 41% career 3-point percentage. Sam Walter, 38% career 3-point percentage. Those are your stretch fours. Yep. Then you obviously bring in Amir Ali, who was a freshman last year, struggled early in the year, but the last 11 games shot 43% from three. We talked about McGee shooting 41% career from 3-point range, and then Ballard, 75% from the field, led the nation last year.
Yep.
So lots of shooting.
Lots of shooting, and that's what we talked about they needed, because when you have someone like Hubbard who's going to command so much of the attention, command the offense, you need shooters around him. And It was Sam Walters that really jumped out to me. I mean, you got a guy who's 6'10", who's shooting, 36, 37% from three, and he's shooting a decent amount. Where'd it go? I just had it. About three a game. And then I started reading 2-point percentage. Yeah. That's not what I'm looking at. About 3 a game. You're shooting about 30%. That's pretty good
that's really good. Yeah,
for a stretch four, and that'll play well with Ballard, who's your traditional big-bodied center that's not going to go out. Those two will play great together. You have Hubbard commanding call. I think we're moving in the right direction.
I hate to bring it up, but you know who it would play greatly with?
Who would it go?
Keyshawn Murphy.
Yeah,
because we literally talked about he can be a small ball center if your stretch four can stretch the court, and that's what they just went and got, and so that kind of sucks that he ends up going out. But Amir Ali is a big one. He's a 6'8", small forward. He was a 4-star, top 75 recruit in the country. Obviously didn't have this great year at Arizona State, only averaged like 5 points per game, but he has a lot of potential and someone that could make an immediate impact. And we talked about they need these tall, long forwards. And then if he can shoot, he doesn't have to shoot 43%, but if he shoots 35% or higher from three, that's a big-time get. I mean, for the season, he shot about 33% from three.
Yeah, that's another big one. And he had that one game where he really showed up big. in his freshman season. So you might have like your next star there. Like he's that body type, the pedigree to be a guy who's who could be a very good player. And so pairing him in a situation where he's probably going to play a lot. I mean, there's not really anyone on that wing. He's going to play a lot, but he doesn't have to. You have some, established guys both on the front court and the back court. He can play off of them and grow into a bigger role, and he has the talent to do that.
Yeah, the game you're talking about, it was an 18-point game against Texas Tech. It went double overtime on the road at Tech, and Tech was an Elite Eight team. They ended up losing 111 to 106, and Arizona State was not good at all last year.
No.
But he went 6 of 7 from the field, 4 of 5 from three-point range, 18.7 rebounds. The game before that against Oklahoma State, he had 12 points and 10 rebounds. So, he rebounds pretty well, especially. And the funny thing is, if you look at his numbers, you can tell that Oklahoma State game, which ironically was the 11th game before the end of the season. They had 11 games left in the season. That's when he started figuring things out. Early in the year, was kind of struggling shooting wise, was not rebounding as well. Only had 2 games, of over 5 rebounds, and that was in 21 games. And so he was kind of struggling early on in the season. Yeah. And then that last 11, that's when the things start picking up. Mm-hmm. And that's why they always say, usually by the end of the season, these are no longer freshmen. They're now starting to be sophomores because they got all this experience. And that's what you started seeing from Ali. And if they can get that, I mean, he shot, again, 43% from 3, 44% from the field, and averaged almost 9 points a game and 5 rebounds per game in those last 11 games.
Yeah, he was really starting to figure it out. And sometimes it takes a while. That's why we've mentioned it. You don't really count on the freshmen. What you get from them is great, but you don't want to count on them. And that's kind of why, because sometimes it takes a long time for them to get acclimated to just the new pace, the new size, physicality, all of that. And and Aker, another great, another big guy, 6'9", 220-ish, probably around there. I mean, field goal percentage is great. I mean, 54% now, limited minutes, but means he's probably all down low. He didn't play a lot. So that's a depth piece.
Right. And he was a high 4-star, top 50 guy nationally, top 15 guy, according to On3, coming out of high school. So he was a guy that obviously with a lot of potential, hasn't fully grasped it yet. But that again, that's Ali too, But Walters has been great in his career. He spent 1 year at Alabama, 1 year at Michigan. We talked about his 38% from 3. I mean, he's just a stretch big, shoots almost 80% from the free throw line, averages about 5 points for his career. That's a guy, off the bench is probably a really solid piece off the bench. Yeah. Or if you want to pair him with a strong center like Ballard or something to kind of stretch the defense a little bit, that's what he can do.
Yeah, he can. Now, he's not going to give you much in the rebounding part of things, about 2 a game. So that's not great for someone who's 6'10", but that's probably what happens why he's more of a stretch guy, plays out a little bit more, not the guy down there doing the dirty work. So you do have to pair him with another center or at least another guy of that size who is going to get down there and do the dirty work.
Yeah, and none of these names are sexy names, big portal commits, but they attacked what they had to attack. What we said, they had to get more shooting, they had to get more size, and that's what they attacked in the portal. Also, the shooting, the size, all of it will help out Josh Hubbard as well, like you mentioned, assuming he comes back still. We want to put that caveat out there, but this will space open the floor, and I bet you'll see his field goal percentage, his three-point percentage start to creep up because he'll have more room to operate.
Yeah, it should. And this is what you need to do. If you're not going to go out there and throw the bag down at these, 5 stars jumping schools every year, you have to find the very good players who fit your team and build a team out of that. And that's what they've done here is they've gone around and they've plugged each hole with, if not a great player, a very good player who fits. So, and that, I think that's what you have to do in this situation. And they've done a good job of it.
And fits the direction that they apparently are wanting to go in. And, to be a team that advances in the NCAA tournament, you have to be able to shoot the 3-point ball well. They didn't shoot it good enough this past year. They didn't shoot it good enough against Baylor. And so we'll see what ends up happening. But so far, we've obviously talked about all the exits, and Murphy was a big one. But seems to be moving in the right direction. So you got to be happy about that. All right, coming up next, we got our top dog of the week. Don't go anywhere. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Here's why I use Game Time. Like I just mentioned, save up to 60% off buying last minute for not just for sports, but also for concerts, comedy, theater, etc. All the things you love to do. The all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of the buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first to listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon, start us off.
All right, well, we're going to have a little history here. First ever two-time top dog of the week, and we just talked about a lot of basketball portal editions. So, yeah. Chris Jans, you're getting it, man. You're cleaning up in the portal. You lost a lot, but now we're heading in the right direction. And the majority of these guys, obviously everything can change with the portal, but these are younger players that could be here for a couple more years and continue to build the program. So, yeah, I mean, I really like what's happening. So,
yeah, first ever. And your second choice was also going to be a first ever two-time edition, too. So, either way, it was going to be two-time. I went a little off schedule. I went with the NCAA for this one. And the reason why is because of the rule change we talked about, I believe, on Friday. It was either Friday or Thursday, and it was to stop the faking injuries from players.
Yes.
Finally, the NCAA does something, and they stuck it to Ole Miss, so that makes it a little better. But it not just Ole Miss. There's a lot of teams that do it. This will obviously help Mississippi State out a lot. We've talked about why that will help them out a lot, just because their fast-paced offense. A lot of teams are more susceptible to do that against you when you have this kind of offense. So overall, I got to give the NCAA props. I'm hard on the NCAA a lot, and you'll know that when we really get into football season and stuff. I'm really hard on them. But finally, in this transfer portal, NIL era, it seems like they got something right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the first time anyone's ever praised the NCAA. They might need to – they might make a plaque and commemorate this in their offices. But
make a highlight video with my words on it.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's the step in the right direction. Like we pointed out, there's going to be some loopholes that you can find, but it's a very good first step for the NCAA. And, yeah, I'm going to give him a shout. Pico, you had a great game. You had a great game. 5 innings, 11 Ks, 2 runs, and your bullpen let you down in the biggest way that I've seen a bullpen let someone down.
Yeah, and that was obviously the first game against Florida, and you want to talk about just a despicable performance. And if you're wondering why didn't you talk about baseball? We have people on here. Why didn't you talk about baseball to start the week off? There was a lot of stuff going on this weekend that we had to dive into first. Baseball, we're going to have to push off till tomorrow's episode, so we'll definitely get into that. Don't worry about that. But we
needed to digest.
Yeah, and also this was supposed to be a lot of good stuff, but the spring game kind of put a damper on it. But you were so hot coming off that Alabama series when you smother Southern, and then Florida you lose 13-3 in 8 innings in a mercy rule, and this is a Florida team that's not very good. We talked about how this is a series that you can start building momentum, and they're 26-14 on this season, or were after that first game that you're just talking about. So heading into the series, they're 25-14, and Pico pitches great. I believe they're up 3-2 when he exited, if I remember correctly.
They were either up or tied when he exited.
Yeah, and then it went downhill after that.
Yeah, it was awful, and it was Stone Simmons, and who had pitched a great game in relief last weekend. Yeah. And he comes on, gives up 6 runs on 6 hits with no outs.
Game's over at that point.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
First off, how do you not yank him before that happens? That's
Yeah.
but like after about the third run, you got to get someone ready.
Yeah.
That was a nightmare. But Pico, I'm sorry your team let you down.
Yeah, for sure. But yes, we'll talk about baseball tomorrow. Don't worry. We'll also talk about softball. They had a massive series
Yes,
against
they did.
Oklahoma, and it was a good measuring stick series. And, Mississippi State softball's great this year, number 16 in the country heading into the weekend. So we'll talk about both those tomorrow. Don't worry about that. We're also going to talk about some NFL draft later this week because it's coming up on Thursday. So
I'm ready. I'm excited.
I'm excited. Speaking of that, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. As your favorite collegiate players get ready for the next level, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Lane and I have talked about it many times. We did a full draft breakdown of every Mississippi State player. That was maybe 2 weeks ago at this point.
Yeah.
Go find that. Check it out. We have we've talked about that. I'm sure on Thursday leading into the draft, we'll also do a rehash of it. And so we'll kind of talk about some of those players. So you don't want to miss that. I hope you had a good Easter weekend and spent some time with the family, but we're back. It's another week of athletics. So
let's go.
Remember, we'll talk into baseball. We'll talk some softball tomorrow. So if you wanted to listen to that and you checked in to listen to that, check out tomorrow's episode. But until next time, Hail State.
Hail State.